Hello there, this is All 24 News, world news program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Karim Zachary. Next are your headlines. At least 18 people have been killed after 2 Russian missiles struck a multi-story apartment building in the southern port city of Odessa. The landmark ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court represents a major setback to President Joe Biden's climate plans. Indigenous protest leaders and the Ecuadorian government have agreed to put an end to the widespread protests. Also coming up in our news program, the Spanish House of Representatives adopted a draft proposal calling for Spain's return to its neutral position on Western Sahara and to restore its relations with Algeria. First off in our news, the first day of July will mark 25 years since Hong Kong was handed to China by colonial Britain, as well as the inauguration of the city's new Beijing-appointed leader, John Lee. Miriam Zian with more insights.
In a ceremony marking the 25th anniversary of the former British colony's return to China, Xi Jinping swore in Hong Kong's new leader on Friday. In his inaugural speech as Hong Kong's leader, Lee pledged to uphold the city's constitution and bear loyalty to Hong Kong.
The one country, two systems policy is Hong Kong's best institutional protection and the cornerstone of Hong Kong's long-term prosperity and stability. It's also a successful national policy that allows Hong Kong to retain its unique strengths.
Britain handed back Hong Kong to Chinese rule on the 1st of July 1997, with Beijing promising autonomy, individual rights and judicial independence until at least 2047. However, the West criticizes China of trampling freedoms.
We simply cannot avoid the fact that for some time now, Beijing has been failing to comply with its obligations. It's a state of affairs that threatens both the rights and freedoms of Hong Kongers and the continued progress and prosperity of their home.
As a response, the head of China defended his vision of one country, two system policy against the accusations of the West in his one-hour speech.
Today I would like to stress once again that the one country, two systems policy, which has been repeatedly tested and proven, meets the fundamental interests of the country, the Chinese nation and Hong Kong and Macau. It benefits from the total support of the more than 1.4 billion inhabitants of the motherland. It has the unanimous approval of the residents of Hong Kong and Macau, and it is widely recognized by the international community. There is no reason to change such a good system, and we must adhere to it in the long term.
Xi's two-day trip to Hong Kong is his first outside of China since the pandemic took hold in 2020, and the first since 2017 when he swore in outgoing leader Carrie Lam. This time, at the swearing ceremonies, all officials wore masks and did not shake hands, and the security was reinforced. Some analysts see Xi's visit as a victory tour after Beijing tightened its control of Hong Kong, whereas the West still criticizes China for not complying with its obligation with Hong Kong.
Ukrainian officials said on Friday that at least 18 people have been killed after 2 Russian missiles struck a multi-story apartment building in the southern port city of Odessa. Other 41 people have been rescued. Local reports said 3 people, including a child, were killed in another separate attack on the recreation center, with 1 injured. U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday said Washington will announce $800 million of additional weapons aid to Ukraine in the coming days. Biden disclosed the plans during a news conference following a NATO summit in Madrid, where he declared the alliance is united in response to Russia's special military operation in Ukraine.
And again, the United States is leading the way. We provided Ukraine with nearly $7 billion in security assistance since I took office. The next few days, We intend to announce more than 800 million more, including new advanced Western air defense systems for Ukraine, more artillery and ammunition, counter battery radars, additional ammunition for the HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems we've already given Ukraine, and more HIMARS coming from other countries as well.
Still with the Russia-Ukraine file, NATO leaders have met during the week summit in Madrid, where they have taken a new strategic concept which defines Russia as the most significant and direct threat to ally security and to peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area. During the summit, the conflict in Ukraine dominated the talks and led the alliance to take several decisions on the matter. Nabil Khazini with more details.
The security reinforcement outside showed that what would happen inside this building was tremendously important. For 3 days, more than 40 NATO leaders met in Madrid for a summit in a unique context and with multiple files on the table. The summit paved the way for Finland and Sweden to join NATO after Turkey made a U-turn and finally agreed to lift its veto, and in a weeks-long dispute that tested the unity of the alliance during the conflict in Ukraine. The Russian President Vladimir Putin sees this as imperial ambitions for NATO. He accused the military alliance of seeking to assert its supremacy through the Ukraine conflict.
In regard to Finland and Sweden, we don't have problems with Finland and Sweden that unfortunately we have with Ukraine. We have no territorial disputes with them. There is nothing that might concern us in terms of Finland and Sweden becoming NATO members. If they want to, please go ahead. But they should clearly understand that they didn't face any threats before this.
The alliance will not only become larger, but will also adopt a new strategy that sees Russia as the greatest threat and no longer as a possible partner. However, this will have far-reaching consequences and will change the image in Europe. From Madrid, US President Joe Biden announced that the United States would strengthen its military positioning in Europe so that NATO could respond to threats from all directions. The meeting was also a chance for US President to blame Russia again for the soaring prices of energy and food around the world.
The reason why gas prices are up is because of Russia. Russia. The reason why the food crisis exists is because of Russia.
At the time of NATO meeting, Ukraine knew several bombardments and shelling in what was a clear message from Moscow that it would respond if the West continues to assist Ukraine militarily. Russia announced it has willingly withdrawn from Snake Island, but there in Madrid, the alliance saw this as a victory for Ukraine.
Because I think that they do have the potential to turn this round. We've seen what Ukraine can do to drive the Russians back. We've seen what they did around Kiev, around Kharkiv, now on Snake Island. I think the right thing for us is to keep going on the course that NATO has set out, no matter how difficult it may be.
NATO's new roadmap not only directed its harshest language towards Russia, but also considered China as a security challenge for the first time. However, Beijing says NATO's first new strategy concept in a decade disregards facts and wrongly defines the country's intentions.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed on Thursday that the so-called Iron Curtain is coming down. The Iron Curtain is a term referring to the political division between Western countries and the Soviet Union during the period between World War II and the collapse of the Soviet Union.
As for the Iron Curtain, I agree with Vladimir Vladimirovich. It's already coming down. Let them just be careful to not get caught. But this process has been launched.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen calls on Ukraine to accelerate its anti-corruption reforms, assuring the country of the support of 27 on the long road to EU membership. UN Political Affairs Chief Rosemary DiCarlo said the United Nations urged Iran and the United States to build on recent momentum to reach a deal. Diplomats spoke at the UN Security Council one day after indirect US-Iran talks ended in Doha, with no sign of progress on resurrecting the pact, under which Tehran limited its nuclear program and returned for relief from US, UN, and EU sanctions. Tehran described the latest talks as positive and said it was ready to reach an agreement. To neighboring Tunisia now, Tunisia's president published a planned new constitution on Thursday that he will put to a referendum next month, expanding his own powers and limiting the role of parliament in a vote most political parties have already rejected. Qais Said has ruled by decree since last summer, when he brushed aside the parliament and the democratic 2014 constitution in a step his foes called a coup, moving towards one-man rule and vowing to remake the political system. Libyas Nationallloyd Corporation said on Thursday it intends to restart the operation of Mabruk oil field in the first quarter of 2023, with production reaching 25,000 barrels per day. The corporation added in a statement that the Mabruk field was closed for more than 7 years after it was subjected to a terrorist attack in 2015, which cost the company $575 million in losses. To the Western Sahara file now, the Spanish House of Representatives adopted a draft proposal calling for Spain's return to its neutral position on Western Sahara and to restore its relations with Algeria. The representative of the Front Polisario of Spain, Abdoulaye El Arabi, highlighted that a draft proposal on Spain's foreign policy had been submitted by the parliamentary group of the People's Party. The 13th point concerned the restoration of relations between Spain and Algeria and the respect for Spain's historical position vis-à-vis Western Sahara under international law and United Nations resolutions. The Sahrawi ambassador to the Republic of Angola, Mr. Hamdi Khalil Mayara, was received by Mrs. Esmeralda Bravo Conde, Secretary of State for Angolan Foreign Relations, at the headquarters of the Angolan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. During the meeting, the Sahrawi ambassador to Angola reviewed the latest developments in the Sahrawi issue at the diplomatic and field levels. Referring to the efforts of the United Nations and the efforts of the international community aimed at finding a peaceful and lasting solution agreed upon by the two parties. Hundreds of Palestinians answered the calls to perform the dawn prayer at the blessed Aqsa Mosque. During the past few days, youth calls were launched emphasizing the need for wide participation in performing the dawn and Friday prayers at Al-Aqsa Mosque and urging the people of Al-Quds, the West Bank and the occupied interior to travel to Al-Aqsa and intensify their presence there. The Qatari Foreign Ministry announced Thursday that it has given Lebanon's cash-strapped armed forces $60 million, a funding that would be used to pay for the troops' salaries. According to the ministry, the announcement comes within the framework of Qatar's firm commitment to support the Republic of Lebanon. Emmanuel Macron symbolically gave Peter Fiala, the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, the rotating Presidency Council of European Union on Thursday. The head of state declared that the last efforts of the French presidency, which ends Thursday at midnight, were committed to finalizing the deal between Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia in order to permit the start of talks for the latter's EU membership. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has lost some of its power to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The landmark ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court represents a major setback to President Joe Biden's climate plans. Hossein Berkan.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday imposed limits on the federal government's authority to issue sweeping regulations to reduce carbon emissions from power plants in a ruling that will undermine President Joe Biden's plans to tackle climate change. The court's 6-3 ruling restricted the Environmental Protection Agency's authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from existing coal and gas-fired power plants under the landmark Clean Air Act anti-pollution law. Biden's administration is currently working on new regulations.
This ruling takes away one tool EPA has to address the rising temperatures that are caused by greenhouse gas emissions. And part of the thing that's scary about it is not just that it takes away this one tool with regards to the power grid. But the basis on which the court made the decision is so broad that you could apply the same logic to any number of other regulations.
The EPA and White House said that the administration lawyers are analyzing the decision and seeking ways to address emissions under existing laws. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, judged through the voice of spokesman Stephen Dujarric that the judgment of the American Supreme Court limiting the means of the federal state to fight against global warming marks a retreat in the fight against the environmental crisis.
While it is not our role to provide legal commentary on judicial decisions of individual member states, just more generally, I can say that this is a setback in our fight against climate change when we are already far off track in meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement. The Secretary General has said repeatedly that the G20 must lead the way in dramatically stepping up climate action.
A group of protests carrying a giant constitution began their march from the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., following the ruling by the very conservative court to limit federal means to fight global warming. The ruling is likely to have implications beyond the EPA, as it raises new legal questions about any big decisions made by federal agencies. The Supreme Court conservative majority has signaled ongoing skepticism toward expensive federal regulatory authority. Conservative legal activists have long advocated to reduce agency power in what has been dubbed a war on administrative state.
To Ecuador now, indigenous protest leaders and the Ecuadorian government have agreed to put an end to the widespread protests that have been paralyzing portions of the South American country since mid-June. Sofian Kanturi.
After more than 2 weeks of blockades and violence, the government and the leaders of indigenous demonstrations in Ecuador reached an agreement to put an end to the demonstrations against expensive life.
Ecuadorians, the strike is over. We have reached the supreme value to which we all aspire, peace in our country. We will work together to turn the peace we enjoy today into growth, wealth, and opportunity for everyone.
Ecuador's government and indigenous leaders signed an agreement on Thursday afternoon to end the protests against expensive life that have paralyzed the country. These agreements put an end to 18 days of demonstrations and blockades by indigenous people across the country, including the capital Quito, with episodes of violence that left 6 dead and more than 600 injured.
We are ready to start or continue the formidable task of building a country of peace, a country of freedoms, a respectful country, a fair country.
The head of the powerful Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities, Leonardo Isa, claimed that personally he believes that Ecuadorians need to strengthen their solidarity.
This is why I think it is important that the network of solidarity in the struggle process should unite us more and more. We are family, comrades. We are the big extended family, which is why we are here.
The agreement provides for the establishment of negotiating committee, the end of the blockage and demonstrations throughout the country, and the lifting of the state of emergency in force of 4 provincial regions. It also provides, respectively, for the repeal and revision of 2 decrees. The first on the extension of oil exploitation in the Amazon, the second on mining.
To Sudan now, pro-democracy doctors said that at least 9 Sudanese protesters died on Thursday as security forces tried to disperse large gatherings of people, calling for an end to a military rule. Witnesses claim that on Friday, hundreds of demonstrators who had gathered in the capital for a second day in a row to oppose last year's military coup were attacked with tear gas by Sudanese security personnel during one of the year's most violent days. After 2 years of suspension, the Asea Jabbar Prize is back. The jury of the Grand Prix Asea Jabbar of the Nobel awarded Thursday in Algiers novelist Abdullah Karoum, Mohand Akli Salhi and Mohammed Abdullah for their literary works, respectively in Arabic, Tamazight and French. The winners of this prize, organized by the National Enterprise for Communication, Publishing and Advertising, ANEP, under the patronage of the President of the Republic, were honored at a ceremony organized at the International Conference Center, CIC, Abdul Latif Rahal. Moving on to a different matter now, the fifth day of the Mediterranean Games, Oran 2022, was the lucky day for Algerian athletes in athletics. Algeria succeeded to raise its number of gold medals to 9. The two 3,000 meters steeplechasemen guaranteed 1 gold medal and another bronze one, while the triple jump also offered Algeria gold. In hammer throw, the Algerian athlete was satisfied with bronze, waiting for today's 400 meters hurdles final, which is expected to put Algeria a step forward to the top.
First of all, I want to thank the public which was present today. I did not disappoint them. Today, I wanted to honor the national flag, and thank God, I succeeded.
Thank God, I won the gold medal, and this is very special coronation, especially that I have been through very difficult conditions, as I had many injuries. Thank God I succeeded to honor my country, and I didn't disappoint the supporters who came for us.
Algerian Amina Balkani won the bronze medal in judo in the weight of less than 63 kilograms after defeating her Italian counterpart in the ranking match, Nicole Di Santo, and this is in the sports hall of the International Conference Center. This comes right after the Algerians' elimination from the semifinals, while Algerian wrestler Radwan Massoud Driss managed to give his country gold in the weight of less than 73 kilograms after defeating a Moroccan opponent in the final. Hassan Doukali, the flag bearer during the opening ceremony, managed to reach the final after the historic achievement qualification at the expense of Jakova from Kosovo, who is the world champion for 2018.
As you can see today, I won the first place, and I thank all people who supported me today. They really motivated me. I thank everyone, and this medal is for them.
And for more insights about the event, we are joined live by our own Osama Ayadi, who's in Iran. Hello there, Osama Ayadi. How are the competitions going so far in terms of organization and the smooth running of the event in general?
We are seeing that the organization of the games here in Oran is going really smooth. Everything is in its place. We don't see or we can't see any problems or issues concerning the smooth running of the games, as well as the smooth running of the touristic delegations here in Oran. Because as you know, Kareem, most delegations here are going out in Oran, and we are seeing that they're liking it here.
Mm-hmm. And what can you tell us about the latest scores and medals Algeria reaped so far?
I have just been notified that Algeria won the 10th golden medal today morning, which is a happier news for Algeria. Yorta Ben Baka could get Algeria the 10th golden medal after the withdrawal of his opponent due to an injury.
Thank you so much, Osama Ayadi. You were live with us from Oran. Well, that's all we have for now. But before we go, here is a reminder of our top stories. At least 18 people have been killed after 2 Russian missiles struck a multi-story apartment building in the southern port city of Asea. The landmark ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court represents a major setback to President Joe Biden's climate plans. Indigenous protest leaders and the Ecuadorian government have agreed to put an end to the widespread protests. The Spanish House of Representatives adopted a draft proposal calling for Spain's return to its neutral position on Western Sahara and to restore its relations with Algeria. Well, we reached the end of our program. This is Kirin Fazakani signing off. Thank you for watching and bye for now.